Today's podcast is a little less tactical and a little bit more of just something that's top of mind for me right now. And I'm going to talk about how to navigate the need for certainty as an entrepreneur. And this is a big one for me because in my previous world in Fortune 30 as a W-2 employee, certainty was something that I frequently craved. And I'm finding more and more as an entrepreneur, to be successful, you have to be more and more comfortable with uncertainty. And so this is something I'm constantly battling with. And it's top of mind just because of some things that have happened recently. And so I'm going to go into if you are someone who feels that you need certainty, or especially if you're someone who was a W-2 and either wants to start a business or is in the middle of a business, maybe this will resonate with you, because it's something that I constantly have to navigate through. Who am I? My name is Ryan Rice. I'm a full-time real estate investor. I am in my fourth year, or I'm about to start my fourth year, rather, doing this full-time. And before this, I worked for a Fortune 30 company for almost 14 years. And I make all of this to try and help you make more money as an entrepreneur, business owner, and specifically if you're in real estate, then there are some good nuggets for you. So what made me think of this is I have constantly been reflecting on how I can continue to improve, how I can improve my rate of learning. And something I've noticed about myself is when there is an idea that is presented, or when there's someone I'm communicating with and they might give me a directive or a suggestion on where to take my business, a lot of times, if it's not an action where I will have certainty over the outcome, then the action is delayed. And what I've noticed is in almost every case, the delay in action only hurts my business. Of course, unless the action has some sort of significant downside, and it's a downside that I shouldn't take, then of course it's wise for me not to take that action. But the more I progress as an entrepreneur, the more I realize that the distance between a great idea and action, condensing that distance all the way down to zero, is what's going to maximize my potential as an entrepreneur in the direction that my business goes in. Now, that means that I have to be very diligent about the judgment of the decision that I'm making. And so it's very important that I have good judgment, because if I'm just taking action all day and I don't have good judgments about which actions to take, then it might or it might not get me closer to my desired destination. And what seems to be very prevalent in people who run very impressive businesses or have run very impressive businesses, they seem to have literally no distance between an excellent idea and an action. Right? And so I guess let me first touch on the excellent idea piece, because we have to delineate that it is an excellent idea. And sometimes that can be the hardest part. And for me, that's something I have struggled with in the past, is knowing whether or not it's an action that I, quote, should take. And I think having judgment on a good action is a little bit different than expecting certainty of a certain outcome. Because even if I have a certain outcome in mind, there could be a bunch of actions that might get me in that direction. And so something that's helped me from a judgment perspective is just always asking myself, will this action get me closer to the destination that I'm after? And I have to make sure that I'm not just filling my calendar with a bunch of busy tasks, that everything that I'm spending my time on is going to get me closer to the destination. So in terms of making judgment on which actions to take, very simple frame of, does this or does this not get me closer to my destination? And if it does, then that's an action that I should take. And if it doesn't, then I shouldn't waste my time. And obviously I need to consider downside, right? If there's some sort of significant downside, then I need to consider that as well before I take a certain action. But I wanted to make this to, one, document where I currently am, because the future version of me has to reduce the amount of time between a great idea and an action. And I was talking with my wife about it yesterday, and even she noticed that sometimes she might have a suggestion for me because I came to her and we're discussing a certain issue or obstacle, and she's given me feedback that sometimes it takes a long time for me to implement the suggestion. And I thought about that, and not only is she right, but I asked myself why. And the reason, I think, is because if I don't have certainty of an outcome, then I delay taking the action, because I only want to take actions where I am certain a specific outcome will occur. And as I thought about that more, it's such a flawed way of thinking, and it's only going to increase the amount of time that it's going to take to get to the destination that I want to go to. And a quality, again, that I've noticed is very consistent among the best business owners is they're able to reduce that time to zero. They take significant, massive action, and they take it quickly. And so I asked myself, what can I do to reduce that distance from idea to action? And I think one thing, I came up with 3 lessons. The first lesson, I have to constantly remind myself that the goal is not the outcome in this specific action, right? So let's say I have an idea or someone presents me with a suggestion. The certainty of whether or not I achieve the outcome is not what's important. What's most important is I ask myself, hey, is this going to get me closer to my destination? And as long as it will, then the only thing that's important in that moment is the goal then becomes just to take a drastic volume of that action, because the sooner I can and the more repetitions I can get of that action, the more I'm going to learn, right? Because someone can give us an idea or someone can tell us to do something, give us a directive, and it sounds really good conceptually, but we're not actually going to learn something until we start doing the thing, until we start taking the action. And so I have taught myself that it's important not to frame my mind around, if I know that an action is going to get me closer to my outcome, then it has nothing to do at that point with the outcome, right? I don't need the certainty that I'm going to get the outcome, because where I'm actually going to learn the most is by doing or taking the action in a significant amount of volume, so that then I can learn, right? So that's lesson 1, is as soon as you realize that a action will get you closer to your destination than you currently are, then the only thing that matters at that point is doing a high volume of that action so you can learn. And that's helped me reframe my mind around, okay, well, I guess if that's the case, certainty around the outcome isn't important, because what's only important is that I get better, and I'm going to get better by taking this action. And so if I think like that, then the distance between great idea to action, assuming it's an action that gets me closer to my destination, it can be 0, because I don't need certainty around the outcome. And just that frame is something that's helped me. The second lesson, and I've already talked about it, but I made some notes, and so this is kind of the order of the notes, but the second lesson that I wrote down is, will this get me closer to my destination? Again, and we've already covered that, but asking that question can help delineate whether or not it's an action I should take in the first place. And then the third lesson, when I'm asking that question, is what's the downside of that action? And assuming worst case scenario, is that something I can live with? Because I think frequently we delay action because what if this happens, or what if that happens? And what I've had to teach myself, if I can just go to that worst case scenario and say, if this occurs, can I live with it? Well, if the answer is yes, then I should think no more. I should spend no more time figuring out whether or not I should do it or starting. I just need to start. And the amount of times that it's taken me X amount of time to start something, and then once I do it, I complete whatever it is in less time than what it took me to actually start. And so just reducing the amount of time between great idea and action, I know is what is going to help me progress into a better version of me from an entrepreneur perspective. And I mean, that could probably be applied to things outside of business as well. But I have to reduce down to zero the amount of time it takes to take a good action. And so super short and sweet and less tactical and more top of mind. But I think especially for those of you out there, if you were a previous W-2 and now a business owner, at least in the world that I came from, which was very execution oriented and operations oriented, I thrived off certainty. And I constantly find myself yearning for it before I take an action because I want to know what is going to happen if I take the action. And I just realized it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with the outcome. Entrepreneurship is taking the most amount of action in the shortest amount of time, because then once we take those actions, we learn from those actions. And we could say, okay, I did that 50 times. The top 5 outcomes in those 50 times were X. Now I can go do a bunch more of those things that look more like the top 5 actions that I took, right? And hopefully what I'm saying is not too conceptual that it's confusing. But action is what is so important in the world of an entrepreneur, because we can have someone who's done exactly what we've done tell us something, but our level of understanding will never be as good as it is as when we go do the thing a whole bunch of times. And so super top of mind, just something I wanted to put out there for you guys. Don't let having to have certainty about a certain outcome delay you taking an action. What's so much more important is that you just take the action and you do it as quickly as you can, because the quicker you do it, the more you're going to be able to learn. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. If this was helpful, I know it was short and sweet, but if you know someone out there who tends to delay making a decision or delay an action because they want perfection or they want to make sure that they're going to achieve a certain outcome, then send this to them. Let's make the world a better place with a bunch of entrepreneurs that can have businesses that are helping a lot of other people. And one way that you can help spread this podcast is by sharing it. So appreciate you guys, love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.